Alright, everybody, welcome to this week's Game Wisdom Live for the week of May 20th, 2018. As always, I am Josh Bycer, and joining me is video game producer Robert Leach.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it
Rob,
going?
it's great to talk to you. How has your week been?
It's been going good. Yeah. The project is slow to the point where I'm not, working nightmare hours, but every Saturday I basically am booked fully to watch the 2K League, NBA 2K League for work. So Saturdays are booked for like 11 hours. It's awesome.
Oh, good. Well, it's been a pretty interesting week here so far. We're now pushing just about 3,100 subscribers here on the channel.
Nice.
So thank you to everyone who is signing up and enjoying things. I'm doing more work with enhancing thumbnails, trying to make them a little bit more eye-catching. And I was talking to other Josh. For those of you who are watching, he finally came back to the channel or to the Discord side, so we had a nice lengthy chat. And he's been trying to convince me to install Adobe Premiere or some video editing software to see if I can do more with it, especially making the videos stand out more.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I like that.
I just wish Adobe Premiere wasn't so expensive. It's $20 a month on top of the $10 I'm spending on Photoshop.
Like I mean, as I mentioned when you brought this up earlier, just go with open source for now. And then if once you get good at it, and you want more features, that's the big difference between Adobe and everything else is that Adobe has so many features that you'll never be able to use even as a professional. So it's just one of those go with the needs that you have. Certainly they have light versions though.
Yeah. Are there any like free versions you would recommend? I guess not, not kind of like the quote unquote morally gray illegal versions.
No, I mean what I wound up doing is I just because I bought I needed a DVD player for my Blu-ray or DVD, whatever the heck I have, that I never use. But that came with editing software, so I just use that. It's Cyberlink. I've enjoyed it. It's run of the mill, not perfect, but it gets the job done. I used it a lot for my streams like over a year ago to kind of polish them up, and lately I've just been lazy. So
I think Josh was mentioning Sony Vaio. Is that a good one?
Vaio. I've heard the name, but I've never heard it in association with video
It was
editing.
like something like that with video editing. I'm not sure.
Vaio's isn't that like a TV or something, or a monitor of some sort, or a brand of computer?
I may be misremembering it too. Well, I'll see what I can find out on this end.
You will find out something. I'm sure that the channel will not let you down. Certainly the internet won't. So a couple Google searches.
And this week we have another live guest or live cast scheduled this Tuesday at 4 Eastern. I'm going to be talking to a voice actor. Let's see, Jacob Burgess. We're going to be discussing what it's like to do voice acting in the game industry. We finally got someone on for that.
That's really cool.
And the book is going well. We're now at the point where I have to contact all the developers. So far I've gotten 2 out of the 20 that I need. The images are done for them. So now I gotta wait for the rest to get back to me, and then I gotta send the images that I want for it.
Nice.
So it's always fun doing that.
Yeah, moving along though. That's really good.
I finished up my last presentation this week for the summer season, which means now I have a few months where unfortunately I'm not going to be making too much money, so I'm hoping I can find something, or if anyone can suggest places to contact for writing and such, I would really appreciate it.
Well, it presents an opportunity to work on that video editing, because I know that really does help. Polish these days really helps the content creators like yourself.
Well, we shall see. The presentation I did was great, except we did during like the biggest thunderstorm of the season so far. So only like 4 people came out, but they really loved it. So
nice.
I just can't win, it seems, with that.
Well, that's okay. It's any audience is a good audience. That's the way I look at it. Because you never know who that person's going to be who allows you to expand your audience and horizons.
Just get myself adjusted here so that way I can lean back and people don't I'm not like half my face is cut off.
Hello,
hey,
Foreign.
Thanks for coming on. Let's see, anything else happening game wisdom wise? I'm trying to think. I guess for you, Rob, anything interesting going on at 2K?
Well, that's what the NBA 2K League is moving along. We had our second official weekend of games yesterday. I'm enjoying it immensely. I know basically I have to work on it every weekend, but at the same time I am really enjoying the games. The commentators are amazing, and if you like basketball, especially if you like NBA 2K, check it out. If you don't, then you probably already know what you're going to get out of it. So.
All right. But this week there's certainly been a lot of interesting game industry related news, and we also had some great games coming out too. Dark Souls Remastered is due out next week. I'm curious to see how that does. I guess, what do you think, Rob? Do you think a remastered of Dark Souls will do all that well?
It's hard for me to tell. The last game I was really excited about a remaster was Grim Fandango, and when I saw it for the first time, it was at Indiecade a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I sat down to play it, and I thought to myself, "Wait, this is exactly the same game." I basically I feel like they must have updated it for new hardware and new systems so it actually play, but it was the same camera angles and everything. So unless I feel like when you reboot a game like that or remaster a game, certainly for video and film and audio, it's about polishing up the content to meet people's current expectations. And for gamers, I feel like that equals graphics and playability. So if you don't improve the graphics, if you don't improve the playability, then you kind of didn't do anything except just re-release the same game.
Mm-hmm. I know people are complaining about the PC version of the remastered, basically saying it's just, DS fix that they're now charging another $30-$40 for.
Yeah, and that's what we run into, right? Is like people who are fans of the game already own the game, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're just giving them a version that's only moderate updates, then yeah, you're kind of losing out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I see they did the same thing for Final Fantasy 15, kind of. They basically just up the ante in terms of graphics according to the trailer I saw. So I don't know how it actually how those two projects pair together. Uh, like what Dark Souls did exactly. It'd be interesting for me to find out.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Tomorrow, I believe Runner 3 is going to be due out. You know the Bit Dot Trip series?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Runner 3 did a stream of it. I'm going to have a first look video up for it tomorrow. And they're basically making, I think, as much of an elevated take on Runner gameplay that I think you can actually manage.
I mean that's cool. It is exciting when a like a video game, like a gamer focused developer makes a game that's considered casual and tries to aim like I really do feel like Plants vs Zombies kind of went that direction,
Yeah.
as did Peggle after that from PopCap. But when you have things like the Bit Trip series, they certainly have really geared it towards gamers. And I enjoyed the first one. Have not played the second, and probably I'm not going to have really played the third for a very long time. But it's always exciting to see that kind of stuff come out.
Yeah. I mean, it is a challenging game. There's some insane levels of hand-eye coordination needed to do some of those advanced challenges. I actually had to quit out of one because I just couldn't do it, and that's crazy when you compare that to a lot of what people consider to be runner games, on the mobile side of things.
Yeah, and you're like top 5%. You shouldn't have too much. You shouldn't have too much trouble.
Mm.
Our advanced stages. I mean, you're not quite in my advanced stage yet, but I feel like, well, I'm better at games in a lot of respects than I was even as a 20-year-old. My reflexes aren't quite there anymore.
I'm sure all the young folks watching are getting a laugh out of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm smarter about playing games. I'm just not faster.
A very interesting game I got a press key for that should be going in a few days is this one called Floor Kids. It's a breakdancing improvisational rhythm game where you have to time your dance moves to the beat, and it just lets you just go completely free flow in terms of what moves you perform.
It's cool.
Completely crazy, and I managed to do reasonably okay despite having no musical rhythm whatsoever.
See, that's odd. As a gamer, you should at least be able to mimic it.
No, probably not. Not with my case. There's no dancing here whatsoever. But with that said, though, there's some very interesting game industry related stuff going on this week that I wanted to bring up. So the first thing is based on the industry insight that for those of you watching this recorded, it will probably be a few days ago. If you're watching this live, it went up today, and that's with the ESRB changes. So this is one that I wanted to bring on stream because considering your background with video game producing, you've probably dealt with the ESRB and probably other rating agencies in your time.
Actually, not quite so much. I mean, the vast majority of my production experience when it comes to the public has been with the educational games, which, while they do have to get rated, they are almost like across the board, not even a question going to be, E for everyone. Or if there's even a younger target for that than that. But I haven't really had to deal with that. Even in the triple A's I've done, which have all been sports, I've never really dealt with a lot of questionable content, even in the indie scene, not once. So luckily I've avoided that, but I've had to deal with it as a consumer quite a bit.
Now, I guess here's something. I'm not sure if you would know this, Rob, or not, but is it true that for each, I guess, region that you're trying to name your game for, you have to basically resubmit your game to it? So, like, you have to submit to the North American, the Pan-European, Korean, stuff like that?
I mean, that sounds entirely legitimate, because anytime you have a new build, a new SKU of the game, it's a different project, it's a different game. That's how the industry counts it. So, yes, that makes sense that they would require that.
Again, I was trying to look up some of this stuff, but it's one of those things where unless you actually have done it, you can't really. There's no accurate information about it online.
Probably not. I mean, what little I know about the ESRB is that it is basically run by parents, random parents, not an actual. You don't have an actual committee of video game or movie experts. It's just people who might have a vested interest in rating something for a family, and then it's all based on their opinions. So it's a wacky kind of weird backwards methodology from a gamer perspective. It is like you would assume, oh, okay, it's a bunch of experts who have this baseline that they go against every single time, but no, it just kind of goes with the winds.
Yeah. And it even says on the ESRB website that they do not play any games that you submit. That's not the point of them. They're not going to, see how hard your game is or anything like that. They just want to know what kind of content you're putting out.
Yeah, and I feel like video games has to go kind of the way of the board game, where it has a difficulty rating. A lot of them do. They don't all have the same thing. It has an age rating, and it has a difficulty rating, and the time it takes to play, all on the cover or on the box. So something like that for video games would be very useful. Certainly throw in a mature content flag, but knowing how long the game takes to play, knowing how difficult it is. Those are two very important things as a consumer. You don't want to, as a new gamer, you don't want to go out and grab you're probably not going to be interested in grabbing the hardest game, the longest game. As a casual gamer, you're going to want to know that. As a hardcore gamer, you don't want to grab the 2-hour title that doesn't challenge you whatsoever. So it's good to know that stuff. I hope they go that direction. I don't know this new, what is it called? Hold on, gotta find it. IARC. I don't know anything about them.
This has to do kind of the news piece that's happening. For if you miss our piece, for people watching this, the ESRB is removing the short form option, which is basically the quick and easy way to get a rating for your game. Now they are only going to have the long form, which is you have to submit your game, it has to be reviewed, you have to pay them to review the game, and this can take several weeks depending upon what their backlog is. And they said that they want people to try and use the IARC, which I probably should have gotten their site up, stands for International Age Rating Coalition, which is essentially a global way of getting your game rated, and they pull their rating systems from the various regions. So you submit to the IRC, they'll get you an ESRB, a PEGI, and so on and so forth. But the problem with that is that it's only for digital games right now. So you cannot use them if, let's say, you want to get your game into Target or GameStop or you name it. You still must follow through the ESRB, which is going to cost you money. Which for major studios is not too bad, but if you're an indie developer, an additional $800 to several $1,000s to get your game reviewed can start to add up.
Well, I gotta say, if you're an indie developer who somehow manages to land your game in a Target or Walmart, you don't need to worry. Like the money it takes to get the ES, just who cares? If you're in Target or Walmart and you're an indie developer, you've got it made. You probably already sold a couple 100,000 copies. They won't take an unknown. They never would. So.
Yeah. And like what's very interesting is that the Binding of Isaac has now officially has an ESRB rating, because for a long time that game has been unrated. That was one of the things that they kind of ran into some pushback over with the Wii and the Wii U eShop back in the day. But if you look at the Switch version, it has an M rating on it. And I'm sure the PEGI and the other versions of it too.
I think what we've just discovered is that we need a new rating system. How many Joshes a game has is how mature it is. So we need to figure that one out, and then we will be the keepers of the rating systems, and we get to play every game out there. Win-win, right? Even
all the crazy low-budget ones that we'll talk about probably in our next section too.
and the ones that apparently Valve is not liking anymore. So there's some good and bad there.
But this does have a lot of people worried about those who have been able to get onto digital stores, because stuff like PSN, XBLA, and the Switch, they do require ratings to get your game on there. Of course, Steam, itch.io, I'm pretty sure GOG, they don't care, but it does raise those issues as to what are you supposed to do if you're going to try to get your game rated by these multiple agencies.
I don't know. If you have to do it, you have to do it. If you just want to go digital and don't need to, then don't. I don't think for gamers. I mean, I could be wrong here. I could be speaking out of turn. I have never, and none of my friends have ever had any interest in caring about the rating of a game.
Me neither.
Now, certainly, you got when Grand Theft Auto came out. I was in, I was not to say there weren't any other mature games before that. I mean, as a kid, there was a text adventure game that was mature that I happened across. But like in college, when Grand Theft Auto came out, 3, not 1, that kind of set a new standard. Postal before it set a new standard. Like all these games that came out that were shocking in their time just constantly set these new standards, but no one seemed to care. Like no gamer. I mean, certainly then you got God of War series and any of these other similar titles that are just 100% about the gore and guts and blood, and like Mortal Kombat was a great example of that, being a publicly accessible arcade game. Those raise a lot of questions, but it doesn't seem like it affects the consumer, and no one seems to care. Like, it could be all about cute little ponies, or it can be about blood and gore. Neither seem to affect someone's purchasing power, purchasing ability in games. You kind of go with what you feel is going to be a good game, and that's kind of where it lands.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. Like, I've said this before, but like for most gamers, I don't think anybody really cares about the ESRB rating. But it does, it's kind of serving a very weird purpose. It's kind of being the gatekeeper for the general consumer, your parents. And it's one of those very weird things. Like, for the people who play the games, we don't care. If a game is rated, E10 or AO, as long as the gameplay is good, chances are we're going to play it. But it's been kind of like that first step for parents in terms of, what game do I buy for my child? And it goes back to one of the things we said before, that the ESRB is not a game playing organization. They're not going to review a game in terms of how easy it is or how hard it is. They're just looking at, does it have violence? Is there sexual themes? Do people drink? Is there religious imagery? Yes, no? Okay, mark it down, give it a rating, 1, 2, 3, we're done. But it would be very interesting to see someone try and do what we were just saying, like have ratings for, how complicated is this game? Can, 3-year-olds play this? Is it a good game for, newcomers to a genre, experts? But we're not really seeing that, or at least not in the mainstream side. And I guess here's a question for you and for anyone watching this. Do you think the ESRB is still relevant these days? With the rise of the independent scene, with quote unquote unrated games, digital, I mean, do they still have as much pull or weight as they did, let's say, 10, 15 years ago?
That's a question that it's hard for me to answer. I mean, from a video game standpoint, what I said I believe still holds true, but it's still a very good measuring stick for the extremely casual player. Now, people our age and younger, and even folks who are a little older than me, I'm 41 now, as of a couple of weeks ago, but um, anyone younger than me, chances are they're going to care less and less about this because they've grown up with video games. The percentages, the chances of you having grown up with video games are just getting higher and higher and higher, especially with the rise of handheld games and YouTube and Twitch, just games everywhere. The higher visibility you have to those things, the more likely you are to fall into the gamer category, at least at some point in your life. And probably the ESRB, when it comes to games, is going to be an even peggy. Just who cares? But for film and television, I don't think that's going away. It hasn't gone away yet. I don't think it'll go away. It's one of those things that I hear is very important to distinguish between a PG-13 and R-rated movie. I think as we get older and older, as people like us get older, and again, not to throw you in the same age group as me, Josh, but we get a little less worried about the ratings. All these action adventure movies that are coming out now kind of mimic what came out at not 100%, but mimic a little bit what came out that was years and years ago, decades ago. But then again, I mean, it fluctuates. In the 70s, it seemed like it was more violent. 2001 A Space Odyssey got a G rating, and just watching that initial 20-minute scene with the apes or the gorillas or the monkeys or whatever they are, or chimps, that's pretty brutal. And I would never look at that and say, oh gee, no. And of course, like some of the older Disney movies, G's as well, and they're just trippy and crazy, and some of them are violent and sad, and promote drinking, Dumbo, for example. But it just fluctuates, and its relevance to me is zero. But I know in terms of the market, in terms of casual observers and families, it is pretty high. So I hate to shrug it off. I know I just went on a long kind of rant about it, but I don't want it to be there, but it seems like it's going to be there. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, and again, it's just going to be hard to find, who could replace them if such a group could show up. And as you said, for us, for people in the game industry, the ESRB is just a slap on the wrist. But they have become kind of the major gatekeepers to the major consoles, to retailers. And to them, they are, the word of law, essentially. Like we said, you are not getting into a major store, no matter how great your game is, unless you have that little sticker on there. And as I said in the video, they are akin, in some sense, to the FDA in that regard. You're not going to go to a ShopRite or Acme or whatever your local food store or supermarket is and buy something without an FDA label on it. How much risky would that be for you and for the store itself? And just like back in the day, we would say, let's just not have the ESRB rating. But then all it would take is for one situation of, a child buying, God of War or House Party or pick a game there, and this whole situation kind of explodes once again.
Yeah. It does. I do feel like there needs to be another alternative, or just an alternative for video games, because it's one of those things that people stable themselves to without question. And I feel like Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony all do that not because they wanted to, but because the superstores wanted them to. The Targets and Walmarts and that kind of store probably requires it, for good reason, because they're answerable to their own consumers. So it's this kind of never-ending thing that no one questions. It's just there, and you have to do it. And getting out of that loop is going to be almost impossible, because in the end, you have to convince the box stores, the big stores. Now, as we go more and more digital, that might change, but at the same time, it requires someone to have that conversation with the head of a company.
Yeah.
And they might say something like, well, we've been doing it for so long, it's such a standard, we're just going to keep it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that's one of the biggest things that was going to happen this console cycle with Xbox or Microsoft trying to push away from physical releases. And there was so much of a harsh blowback from that they rescinded. But we could get to that point someday as internet speeds continue to improve, as the seamlessness of digital sales continue to grow. We could reach that point where why should you go to a GameStop? Why should you go to a Walmart or anything like that when I can just buy the game online, have it download, and I'm done?
Yeah. Yeah, now that the big consoles are doing that, really, it is for the folks who don't have a good internet connection, I guess, still, and that sucks, because then you can't play online either. So it does. There's still a need for those stores, but at the same time, yeah, you got to ask that question. And I guarantee you the studios are asking that. Like, at a certain point, they're going to say, okay, what is the fiscally, how does this affect our bottom line to have, to make physical copies and put them in a store and that kind of thing. I will say, I'm starting to work on the console again, Switch, and it is the first time I've done physical media in 7 years or so. Back in the educational game days, that's what we worked on exclusively. But yeah, it's the first time, and to me, it's like, oh, people are still doing this. What? How did this happen? Because yeah, I haven't, like I said before, I haven't touched my CD-ROM, DVD, Blu-ray drive in forever.
Yeah.
Because I download everything via Steam, everything.
Yeah.
And if I owned a Switch, which I'm hoping to do soon, I would, again, same thing, everything electronically, everything online.
Yeah. And again, for people watching us right now, we've talked about this before, but there's a lot more costs that go with a physical release. You have to manufacture it. You got to distribute it. You have to deal with the stores themselves. They get a cut of it. So, as we've seen before with video game publishing, if you can remove a cost like that, guess what? That means more money in your pocket. So why not do that? I mean, we saw it with manuals being downgraded. I mean, most physical releases these days is just literally, here's a case, here's a CD, now go download the rest of it from our server and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And this actually does go towards another problem that a lot of people have had, less so with games in my mind and more so with movies and music and ebooks, is that they never, like, for the vast majority, especially popular stuff, they never adjusted the price to like, once you got rid of the physical copy, they never made the price less because it's a digital copy, which means they're taking those extra profits. And for video games, because the video game cost, the baseline cost has remained the same since the 80s. $60 for a game, it's been, like, for a AAA game, that's been it, like, for 40 years almost. That means that a game now is cheaper than it's ever been, ever, by leaps and bounds. And I mean, even though the number stays the same, I mean, given inflation, all that stuff, it is way cheaper. You go on, you just do a Google search, say, how much is $60 in 80s, like 1984 money, when just before Nintendo came out in the U.S.
Oh yeah.
And it's just, it's shocking. And so video game companies are spending more and more and more money while having to charge the exact same amount. So getting rid of physical copy, I feel like, would be very much in their favor.
Yeah.
And they'd be very much for that.
And I think the problem, and what's causing, and this could probably be its own topic we could discuss later, on other casts, is both the consumer backlash and kind of, the stores kind of having like an almost, vice grip on their sales. Because that if they could, if the option was there to completely remove GameStop, Best Buy, Walmart, you name it, So many publishers would jump at that opportunity. They could just, if everybody could just say tomorrow, guess what? No more physical releases. We will no longer sell our games at any store. You must get it from our eShop. And it worked. That would change the industry probably overnight.
Yeah, it did that with cell phones when the iPhone first came out. The App Store was so different in how its approachability from both consumer and developer standpoints. It changed the business model overnight, and the carriers who had to abandon their shops, that was, having worked in that particular area before the iPhone, it was a nightmare. Like, because they would require you to make a game for both their most modern phone and their least, and that's like making a game for the Xbox One and the Atari 2600 and having to port that. Yeah. So it's getting rid of that is a big deal. So the requirements that a store might have, like your ESRBs, that would be huge to get rid of.
Yeah. And that would probably cause a lot of those stores to go out of business too, probably within like a few months. I mean, imagine GameStop not getting access to the latest games anymore. That would just kill them. And
yeah,
I mean, we've been talking about this for years now, about GameStop's decline in terms of its relevancy in the game industry. And again, it raises that question. Like, here's a good point. This past year, Toys R Us went out of business. And how many gamers, cared about that? I mean,
right.
Not a lot. And hi, Red Bull, thanks for coming on. And that's the point. Like, Toys R Us has been an institution for decades now. But how much do they really impact game sales? I mean, of course, you can say, parents go and stuff like that. But in the grand scheme of things, how many people are really getting their games that way?
Well, this just brings up a point in my head, which just feels obvious. The big stores do have one major stranglehold on the games industry, and that is they sell the consoles. And that is like, and certainly I think a lot of us buy online, especially because you don't have to sit outside in line at a store on Black Friday to run in and get your console. That doesn't mean you're going to get it in time. Certainly there's limited supply, but because you're tied to that physical source no matter what as a console, and that's never going to change if Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo have anything to say about it, then yeah, you're screwed. You're not, because they can easily just say, well, we would sell your console, but we need to be able to sell your games as well. So that presents some issues, and because a store would have that stranglehold, they can totally hold them hostage.
Yeah. But as we've seen, I think that could be another reason why consoles are trying to keep these life cycles going longer and longer, so they don't have to restart the whole market share war. And like, the big question, I know E3 is coming up very soon, do you think we will see another console iteration cycle? And this is to you, Rob, and to the people watching. Do you think we will hear announcements of a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox 2 or so? I mean, Nintendo Switch, I doubt we're going to be hearing about a new Nintendo console in the near future. But this console cycle has been going on for a very long time. Let me see. I actually want to just quickly check this. The PlayStation 4 was released in 2013, so we're going on 5 years without any major, update to the PlayStation side.
And not even an update. It's an announcement even. Yeah. Even just an announcement. Like, we would know about like these new consoles a year ahead of time usually. Certainly months before they would ever come out. But yeah, no, I mean, I certainly think you would have heard about something. I mean, there's so much information leaking happening. Something would have come out. And certainly I don't know anything about it. I can't speak to its validity, but yeah, it does. It seems like they're going to try and keep it going as long as possible. Maybe they're researching ways to lower the cost as much, like tremendously. I remember, sorry to interrupt, I remember back in like the late 90s, the PS2 was popular. They actually made a drive, just like your CD-ROM drive for a computer. That was a PlayStation 2.
Hmm.
I haven't seen something like that since, but I thought that was really brilliant.
Yeah. And again, with the hardware kind of adopting multiple features these days, again, many consoles now have Blu-ray players built into them or DVD players. It's becoming very democratized, or I'm not sure what the term I want to use in terms of just all-encompassing could be one. Hey, Algardo, in terms of just being able to get this, I mean, I don't need a Blu-ray player anymore. I hook it up. I mean, I've been watching Blu-ray movies for the last year and a half on my PlayStation 4. Why do I need another piece of hardware? And this actually is a interesting segue we could go about in virtual reality. That whoever becomes the standard there will kind of set the pace. Like, why should I buy your visor when I have this visor that supports everything? And the
Yeah,
same goes for with these consoles. Like, and this is one of the reasons why the console market has kind of become, this battle of the giants. Nobody would be crazy enough to try and compete with Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony these days. I mean, who would who would try to do that? I mean, we could maybe have a case for someone like EA or Active Blizzard, but even then, that would be, that's like Game of Thrones level of betrayal if you try and say, you know what, we're not going to make Call of Duty for these consoles anymore. We're going to do it to the BlizzCon 2017 or whatever the heck they would call it. And hey, Smart, thanks for coming on too.
yeah, and it's funny that you say that because you have those exact companies doing the exact thing online to
Mm.
Steam.
Oh
It's
yes.
just so, and everyone loves having that, right? Everyone loves
Mm.
that particular nuisance. Um,
Oh yeah.
so
Buy it
yeah,
on Steam, but you need the Uplay to play it, or then there's that time you need to buy on Steam to get it on Microsoft, and you also had to install SecureROM all at the same time to run just one game.
yeah, and nowadays like EA and Blizzard, they don't even launch their games on Steam anymore.
Ooh.
EA does some of their AAA, but like Blizzard, what you can't get well, this is right. You can't get League of Legends, you can't get Hearthstone, you can't get that stuff.
Diablo, StarCraft, you name it. And it's one of those, and this is the real interesting point. I'm sure you don't have the answer to this, I'm sure the people watching don't, but how much would it impact those sales? Like, again, imagine if tomorrow Blizzard says, hey, guess what? You can download Hearthstone on the Steam, or you can play Diablo or buy Diablo on Steam. I mean, we could say it would be great, we love that additional functionality, but would that really impact sales all that much?
I think so. I really do because I mean it's just me. I can't say that everyone thinks the same way as I do, but there's a lot of games that I buy on Steam that I don't even play. And that's yes, that's actually a great point.
Yep.
Bolt. But like you gotta. I'm sure they've done these calculations already, but like I play Sims 3, and I played Sims 3 very very long time, and I played on Steam. I can't buy Sims 4 on Steam. Now, would I buy it? Would I not? Well, if it was on sale, totally.
Yeah.
Um, there's no reason not to launch that stuff on Steam at least eventually. You don't have to do it right away, but I like Dota 2, and I might like League of Legends, but I can't ever try it without having to download a whole new thing and go
Mm-hmm.
to Riot's website and go through their horrible, at least last time I tried it, sign up process.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
but the
And
same, yeah,
I was about to say, like Path of Exile, they originally launched, you only could play through the Grinding Gear or Triple G site, and then they brought it over to Steam. And that made it a lot easier for people to enjoy that game.
yeah, especially when it's an online game and you can play with your friends. I mean, how many people do you play with on Steam? I don't know
Mm,
that answer. That's just kind of a hypothetical, but like I only play multiplayer games on Steam. I don't
yeah.
play multiplayer games anywhere else.
Yeah,
Uh,
because you have all that built-in functionality to it, and that's always been one of Steam's strongest selling points. It's not just where you download games. It's where you can talk to your friends. You can set up chat rooms. You have instant matchmaking using the Steam servers. Why should I create 15 different accounts for 15 different games when just pull my Steam account and let that be my account for your game? And I know, like, this is one of those things that depending upon who you talk to, this is either a big deal or just, a day in the life. But it's still a very big part of this functionality, and that's been one of the biggest things like, even going back to what we were saying earlier with me trying to learn Adobe Premiere or some kind of video editing software, being able to make things easier for people to experience will always lead to greater sales. I mean, one of the big things about Hearthstone has been the fact that it's the CCG for people who don't want to spend hours upon hours of building decks and having to buy cards and hunting around for stuff like with Magic the Gathering. I don't need to hunt down tournaments and find booster packs. I just, load up Hearthstone and pick up the stuff in the store. I mean, that's it. There's no, greater mystery or greater search there.
Yeah, and also it benefits the company as well, because like Hearthstone, League of Legends, Dota, whatever, they thrive on these extraneous purchases, and you can do like a 1 day only sale, or an hour long sale, or a premiere pack. There's only so many packs of this. We're going on sale at midnight. Like, you can do these very specific, very targeted sales and announce it just in your game. No one else in the world knows about it, because you really, who are you selling to? But yeah, you can really manipulate your marketing very easily with these games, and it's cheap. So it's just all kinds of benefits to get more people on.
And not only that, but you're dealing with a closed store system. On Hearthstone, they don't give a crap about Amazon or Steam or GameStop. Blizzard sets the prices for everything, or Active Blizzard. If they want a booster pack to be 55 cents or $8 or you name it, who's going to compete with them? Nobody can compete with you when you have your own closed system like that. And that's one of the major attractors of the free-to-play market. Again, you pick a free-to-play game, it's not like I can buy a WoW subscription that's different on Amazon or GameStop that's different from Blizzard. It's all uniform because they're setting the price. And that could probably lead into a greater talk about the whole idea of loot boxes and monetization. But we're 44 minutes in. We haven't even gotten to our second topic yet. And Red Bull actually brought up something else I wanted to at least talk about for a few minutes here, about the new Call of Duty. So did you hear the news about it?
I feel like I did. I mean, I've certainly heard other things about battle royales coming out in the next so many months and whatever. It seems like, as you had predicted in January, it's the new thing.
We need to. So the new plan, Rob, is we need to create Josh Royale. That's we gotta put the Josh box aside. That's going to be our new project for the summer.
Yeah. And I don't see why we can't have, a battle royale with Josh boxes as the main focus. So, Josh Box Royale.
There we go.
Do that.
Just throw boxes at people. But getting back to the topic, for those of you who have somehow not heard of it but still watch us, which thank you for that, it was revealed that the next Call of Duty game will not have a single-player campaign, and it will be in lieu of having an actual battle royale. So it's just going to be all multiplayer going forward with the next Call of Duty. And hey King, thanks for coming on. And that's a very big deal for a lot of people. Because as we've seen, Call of Duty has kind of evolved into two separate organisms. You have the single player campaign with, the bombastic visuals, top tier voice actors and stars lending their voices and stuff like that. And then you have the multiplayer, this crazy arcade perk progression system that keeps people playing for months and sometimes even a year or so until the next iteration. So with the Battle Royale, they're basically cutting out a good segment of why people play these games. And it's got a lot of people deservedly upset because, again, I think they're still going to charge $60 for it. So before I give my thoughts, what do you think about that, Rob?
I mean, I'm a kind of a lifelong solo player, so it does pain me. I'm not the biggest first-person shooter, but I know if they took the games I really liked and made them multiplayer only, which I've been worried about in the past, having played Final Fantasies, and then it became multiplayer, and then I kind of panic, and then it goes back to single player, and I'm like, oh, but then it goes back to multiplayer, and I panic, and it is one of those things. It's just, why would you? I don't know. You take your franchise
Hmm.
Why would you do that to it? I can see making two separate products. I can see that. Certainly, you could even put less money in the solo experience. You'll still sell it to those people.
Oh yeah, and it's got a lot of very interesting reactions. I just typed in Call of Duty Battle Royale, and one of the first things that popped up that kind of made my head hurt is from Business Insider. The quote is, "I'm not a Call of Duty fan, but I'm excited about Battle Royale mode." But I don't care about you then. If you're not a Call of Duty fan, you're not giving me any insight there. And I mean, I'm not a huge Call of Duty person myself. I have played, the free weekends from time to time, and I like their progression model. But, and that's an interesting point, Red, that, and thank you, Gar, I was just about to look that up, that it's been reported about 35% of the people who play Call of Duty do buy the single player campaign. So, I mean, there is a market there. And again, it raises that very interesting point about taking away features that kind of became a part of your brand over time.
Well, that's an interesting question. Okay, so you have the 35% who play it for the single player. What is the percentage of actual money made?
Mm-hmm.
Because are the single player people buying the using microtransactions? Are they buying the loot boxes? Are they going after this? Maybe they realize that these people, they're the one and done. They pay for it once, and that's all. They'll play it over and over again, which I gotta say is insulting that someone would think about or say, and feel like I'm insulting myself there. But like, as a solo player, I would hate to be cast aside because I feel like my $60 is worth just as much as someone else's $60. But then I start to realize maybe that other person's $60 is actually worth $100 because I don't want to buy anything else once I paid for the game.
Mm-hmm. And as Allura just said, that's a big point too. I mean, there's a huge cost in making this campaign, and I mean, I love single player games. I'm a huge single player person, but we have seen those cases where a single player campaign is one and done, as you said, Rob. So you can spend several $100,000 making a single player game that people play once and then put aside, or do you take that money, put into a mode that people will keep playing again and again and again, that you can sell them more loot boxes or sell them more custom skins and DLC? And I mean, I think the problem is, and again, this could be its own talk, that you cannot treat single player the same as multiplayer and vice versa. I mean, we've seen developers or publishers actually make that mistake. The famous example of Dead Space 3 needing to sell 5 million copies for that series to stay afloat. That was never going to happen. Or people expecting Resident Evil 7 to pull in, numbers similar to a major multiplayer game. You can't do that. And one of the smart things we've seen from the independent side is budgeting your game. Even somebody like Atlas has been smart about this. They know that a game like Persona, they're not going to make Fortnite numbers. They're not even going to pull Call of Duty or God of War numbers. So you have to budget your game accordingly. And the studios that tend to mess up like that are the ones who think, I'm going to dedicate, 5 to 10 years and several $1,000,000 and I'll make that money back. You can't do that. You have to be smart with your money and smart with your development time.
And it actually begs the question. I feel like this is something that you'd be interested in exploring a little more. Is that maybe even the design costs of a battle royale are far less than a strict multiplayer team based, because you don't have to balance anymore. You just don't have to level balance. You just throw people in an arena and shrug, and you're gone. You're done.
You don't need to spend money on designing new maps. Because again, it's about the 100 people playing your game. I said this in my series on replayability, which it's now posted on Medium and on Game Wisdom, that you don't need to spend money adding in new weapons or new maps. As long as that basic gameplay is there, every 100 people are going to have a completely different experience. So there's no constant cost there other than keeping the servers going and throwing in a new hat or a new gun model from time to time. I mean, I am sure they're spending far less money supporting Fortnite than Blizzard is supporting Overwatch. And there's a big question. Here's our next big gamble for the folks watching. When do you think they're going to announce Overwatch Battle Royale? Because Blizzard is keeping an eye on Battle Royale. We've said this before. Blizzard is the king of refinement and iterating on an idea, not on unique ideas. So they are keeping an eye on Fortnite and PUBG and Call of Duty. So when do you think we'll hear about, Blizzard's Battle Royale game?
Oh gosh, any day now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as they came out with like seemingly quickly as they came out with like Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone and boy, Overwatch. Like as soon as like the that is them, right? Yeah, that is.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they like that stuff became popular, oh look, we got an esport that's MOBA. Oh well, we're going to copy. We're going to do Heroes of the Storm. That's
Mm-hmm.
slightly different, but exactly the same. And collectible card games online. Oh, we're going to do Hearthstone. Oh, we have these multiplayer big time tournaments with first person shooting. Oh, we're going to do Overwatch. And we're going to make that into a league. And I'm in
Mm-hmm.
an esport myself, but like yeah, with Battle Royale, I mean, I feel like any day now. And even though I don't think they're gonna match the Fortnite numbers, I don't know if that's even possible anymore. We had discussed that a little bit, but Heroes of the Storm is still around.
Mm-hmm.
Overwatch is still around. It's not the most popular esport, and it probably won't be. But you know, they don't care. They're going to make their money.
Yep.
I don't know, but I actually don't know how. Maybe this number's out there. Like, how profitable is Overwatch? My money is on not at all right now. But then again, like having actually been in esports now, it's easy to see that everyone's looking at the future, not at the present.
Mm-hmm. And it's only going to be a matter of time for them to jump in. Now, you never know, Red, with Overwatch. I mean, we've seen crazier things. I mean, Fortnite was originally a tower defense style, horde mode, and now it's gone battle royale. But it does raise, again, those very interesting points. We've sort of got off of our original topic here. But that with this battle royale phase going through, how many people are going to still be around in a year from now who are trying to compete with it? And I know, Red, you asked earlier about what are my thoughts on it. I'm not a big battle royale person. I just don't see that appeal to me of just repeating the same basic gameplay just with another 100 people. I need that. I need progression. I need something to shoot for other than just a top rank. It's one of the things that kind of keeps me from playing a lot of CCGs. But I guess for you, Rob, do you like the battle royales, or have you seen them?
I mean, I watch them. I'm probably never gonna get into them because again, there's just too much content out there, and my interest level in battle royales is low enough. Like I tried a battle royale on Steam. It was unique enough for me to play a couple of times, but I'm never going to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's I feel like there's a lot of old games that I still want to play that I'd rather play than a battle royale. And by the time I'm interested in battle royales, they're going to be gone. So that's all I have to say on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, I should knock on wood there. Like, they'll probably still be around.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just face it.
All right. I think with that, we'll take it's time for our news section talking about crazy games coming out, and then we'll move into our final topic regarding the Steam recent attack on visual novel games. So, for those of you who are new, I always like to take a look at some of the crazy releases that are going to be due out soon, and just talk about some of the weird titles that we're seeing. So, here's one for you. There's a game called Don't Pick on the Fat Kid that's coming out in a few days. I'm sure that's going to be very exciting. It's apparently a beat 'em up game. I did look into it. Let's see. There's a game just called Hentai Puzzle. I think we all know what that's going to be about. Let's see. Apparently that Gay Nation game that we brought up last week, it was pushed back, but it's eventually coming out soon. I'm sure we're all super excited about that one. Let's see. Gansel and Hedrettel? They reversed the names. I guess that's to avoid copyright with Grimm's Fairy Tales.
There's no copyright on Hansel and Gretel.
A game called Bro Defense. That seems pretty tame. Dungeons and Hunting. Well, I guess we know what that one is. Let's see. Elder Scrolls Online. I know that's a real one. I'm pretty sure that's a real game. Let's see. Anything else? We haven't had too many really weird games. While I'm looking that up, there's still more news about the theme park or the theme hospital spiritual sequel. That's looking pretty good.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully that one will be due out soon. Let's see. I guess while I'm looking up some weird games, are there any games that you're looking forward to, Rob?
Yes. Well, I mean, looking forward to. I guess depends on your definition. I bought a few more games that I'm actually looking forward to that were on sale. Sacred Gold. Had not played that one. Worms Crazy Golf. I'm excited to play that one. I'm a big Worms fan, and mini golf video game fan, kind of. And then Pony Island is the one I'm really interested in playing.
Oh, you haven't played that one yet.
I've not played that one yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Alright. I just saw a Battle Royale boot camp game. I'm not sure what that's going to be. Let's see. What? Some game that combines, it looks like tower defense, zombies, rhythm games, and apparently it's softcore porn as well. That's... Oh, and Trump's in it too. Okay, that's good. Game's called Oiled, apparently.
That last one sounds like a just a tag game. Like just you put in a search word, that one comes up, and it sounds unique enough to buy it, and then you hate it and never play it again.
Or you return it.
Yeah, or you return it.
Wait, what? There's a game called Arizona Sunshine. Okay, and it's rated adults only, which I'm not sure why. Huh. That's weird. Oh, it's in VR only, too. But looks like we're not getting too many crazy games. I'm sure I'm sure this is just the lull, Rob. I think we'll get to that. We'll get more insane stuff probably as the weeks go on.
How jaded are we that the amount you just rattled off, with like a half dozen, is not enough in terms of crazy games coming out? We're used to like 20. What's going on?
Wait, there's a game called Wrestlers Without Boundaries, where you play against WWE people, and I guess that's about it.
I don't even want to know what that game's going to be like, Red Bull. I don't even want to know.
I'm sure somebody's working on that one as we speak. It will come. I'm sure it will.
Oh, boy.
Let's see. A game called Bitsy Bits. Oh, here's one I'm sure everyone will love. There's a game called Triggering Simulator. I'm sure that had a lot of development put into it.
Probably. Any game with the simulator added onto it, that's a questionable game in my book. They're so popular, though. They're so popular.
And I think that's it. What's this? Oh, that's one I already looked at from a while ago. Alright, so enough of our little break. Let's get back to our final topic then for this week. And that has to do with a recent Steam crackdown regarding adult-themed games. Probably a few that we've just talked about in the last few minutes. But
yeah.
Valve has recently been threatening to pull a lot of games that are now deemed quote-unquote sexually explicit. So that probably includes most of the visual novel games on the channel or on Steam, as well as stuff like Hoonie Pop, there we go, and probably a bunch of other games that feature very risque elements to it. And the thing that's got a lot of people up in an uproar about this is the fact that these games were originally allowed onto the platform, whether being vetted by Valve in the past or through Steam Direct. And it's causing some very interesting discussions regarding both censorship and again about what it means to have these stores and what rules. So, what do you think about this kind of issue, Rob?
I feel like we had talked about not this specific thing, but we've talked about Steam quite a bit, and they are not. I mean, certainly they're not the only game in town, so to speak, but they are pretty much. They pretty much are. So. So many businesses are 100% dependent on Steam, and that is outside of even game developers. Like there are businesses out there that sell Steam keys, and that's how they make their profits, is that they sell Steam keys, and they do not have to share the profits with Steam. Steam lets this happen. And so when I think about that, I think, well, what if Steam decided to very reasonably decide to not let that happen anymore? They would instantly put all those companies out of business. And there's dozens. There are dozens of them. Now they can do that at any time there. They can do that with any content in their store. They could say, you know what, we're the ones who didn't want Blizzard games on here. Or they could just say, you know what, we don't want indie games anymore. They're kind of trashing up our works here. They've kicked out entire developers many times. You know, that comes up all the time when Steam's just like, you know what, we don't trust you guys anymore. You're gone. So when they decide, you know what, we're cracking down on adult content, then that's going to cause a stir for sure in a variety of communities, especially the ones that buy those and the developers of them.
Yeah.
But you can't be shocked. I mean, you can be shocked, but you can't be like caught off guard, because that means you did not have a plan in place for when that actually happens. When one store just cuts you out, Target and Walmart and those stores, they don't sell that stuff. So why expect the number one retailer online to do that? But like, you know, you got to have that in place. You got to have some alternative way to sell your stuff. And for a group like that, for that genre, it shouldn't be all that hard to do. You just make your own, and that's its theme, and everyone knows where to go to get it done. They should have had that in place a long time ago, instead of depending on Steam and giving up their X percentage to Steam, 30, I believe, for every sale. And now that they have this happen to them and they don't have a plan in place to deal with it, it seems like they really didn't think through their mature money-making model. Like, that's the kind of thing they could have been making 100% on of their money on for a long time, but just didn't, because of what we just talked about with Steam. But Steam is not known as the mature gaming place, and maybe they are starting to be, and they don't want to be. So
yeah. And again, it's one of those really weird issues with Steam, and again with how Valve operates, that a lot of the stuff they do just seems to be a lot behind the scenes. And this is one of the issues we have, and we've talked about with Steam before in the past, that when you set yourself as a premier store, you have to hold yourself to certain standards that, you know, a place like itch.io or GOG, or even some place like GameStop or Best Buy these days don't. Because you are considered to be the number one place for video games. I mean, at this point, for a lot of people, Steam and PC gaming are synonymous to each other. So you have to have those standards in place. But the problem, and as King just brought up as well, is that if you don't set standards to begin with, can you do it now? And I said this on Twitter. If Valve came out day one, or, you know, as soon as these games started appealing, and say, we do not want these kinds of games on our store. We are fine with God of War. We are fine with Witcher. But, you know, Hooney Pop, pick any visual novel game that's on there today. We do not want those games on there. That's different than saying, oh, we're going to let them on there. We're going to take all of their money for it for like year, 2, 3 years. But now, you know, we're cutting it off at this point.
And certainly that standard there that you spoke of is important, but at the same time, they reserve that right.
Yep.
And to Kingme's point, like, I agree that certainly God of War is one of the most violent games, and has a lot of adult themes in it nowadays. But at the same time, you don't hear God of War and think porn game. At least most people don't. That's not how it's sold. It has commercials on television. It's an action adventure with adult themes, but not an adult themed game with whatever else they decide to add to it.
And what you just said there, I kind of want to expand on that point there, Rob, regarding adult themed games versus games that have adult themes to them. Because, I mean, this is one of those, again, going back to the ESRB from earlier, this is one of the biggest issues that we have when it comes to rating or distinguishing games. For instance, like something like The Last of Us that dealt with, you know, dealing with the apocalypse and trying to keep a child alive. Would that be considered more adult than a game like House Party, which is about, you know, you trying to get laid at a party with a bunch of hot-looking adults? And this is the point that a lot of people tend to make. there are games that deal with very mature themes and very interesting situations. Something like This War of Mine, for instance, a game that deals with you making choices during a war situation. Would that be more mature than something like, I keep bringing up Hoonie Pop, but that's the only adult game that I can think of right now. But the point is that, well, and this is another big issue, what one place or one person considers adult, someone else may think is relatively tame. And we've seen this before with any kind of mature situation. We have famously talked about how Europe, and especially Germany, they will censor any violence, no questions asked, but they allow, sexual situations, or I think some of the areas do. Or, and again, that's vice versa in the United States. Blood, guts, gore, we're fine with that, but show a naked body or talk about sex and, hard stop right there.
Yeah, we go insane.
Yeah.
But to King Me's point, yeah, I mean, that certainly is a good talking point for that. That they were already censored before they put on, like they're the USA Up All Night version of adult games. That's a great point, and that's something that if they wanted to underline, they absolutely could. They could just say, well, we want to get rid of the explicit stuff. We will just continue to do the censorship as we have done, which is kind of one of those things that's an argument unto itself. Like back in the days when, I'm trying to remember any number of music stores that did not sell the CD albums that had the explicit words on there.
You saw that, parent warning label on a lot of CDs.
Yeah, and with was it Blockbuster that it had a lot of edited content that they would rent to you. You could not rent the actual movie. You had to rent
you couldn't rent the R-rated version. You had to rent the PG. I did that with the Lawnmower Man back in the day, and then we finally got to watch the R-rated version of that. And it's one of those and that's another very weird point. And let me check our time. We could probably spend another hour and a half talking about it. But the idea of having the watered down version versus the explicit version. I mean, anyone who has premium channels versus watching stuff on a network TV. Like you watch movies where they start screaming, cursing, and you see they just say damn and darn, and they're not really saying that. And it's one of those things where, does that content really add to it? But in the same breath, is it right to censor something's original vision when you're competing with or you're putting it on a different channel? And going back to what we said with the visual novel, they're already coming censored, and with the full version being available via a patch or a simple text file tweak that you can get from the developer's site. The hot coffee code way back when. But yeah, like I would probably not want to watch Game of Thrones if it appeared on NBC. Like just it's now a 15-minute per episode show. Great. Yeah. And again, it's one of those very interesting topics. We've talked about this before. I know we've said this many times regarding censorship and quote-unquote, diversity checklists and stuff like that. Wherein, there are people who will say, this stuff is just smut. Good on Steam, get rid of it all. But it always raises that point about the issue of free speech and a free market. That obviously, as we said, what you said a few minutes ago, Rob, that if Steam wants to change their mind, they can do that. If Valve tomorrow says, guess what? Any video game that starts with the letter D is no longer allowed on our storefront, they could do that. And it's not a case of you saying, well, we just won't use Steam. Because you can't really say that anymore about the PC market. But it always raises that point about just how much freedom do you have when it comes to designing your game when you are having to play ball with these stores. And it's always great when these conversations kind of, wrap around to our previous points, but this is what we were saying before with retail. You can say, I'm going to make the most sexually explicit game ever made, but then don't be surprised when you give it to Walmart and they say, no, we're not putting that in our store, or GameStop, or so on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this discussion especially weird is that we had no reason to have this discussion before. Like yesterday, I would have been like, whatever. I know the games I like and the games I don't. When those games like are advertised to me, I'm just like not interested. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I am. I don't care. Like whatever. It's a
Mm-hmm.
game. If it's a great game, maybe I'll be more interested to
Mm-hmm.
check it out. But if it's a crappy game, whatever. And it's not uh, like these kinds of games have been around forever. I'm trying to remember that beach volleyball game from
Dead or Alive. Mm-hmm.
that game just
Mm-hmm.
blew my mind when it came out. That was so ridiculous. But like now to your quick point on like Outlast Red Bolt,
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's another like why do they keep having crappy content as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Outlast. There's that scene where the guy gets his fingers chopped off. And again, and this goes back to what King said earlier, and it's always the, counterweight to this argument about sex is, oh, you don't want to show breasts, but having people getting their heads ripped off, or fingers being destroyed, or even stuff like the whole, jump scare horror genre, people being killed that way, that stuff is fine. And it raises that point as to what is that line. Like, what if tomorrow, like, again, we always use this point, but if Steam announces tomorrow there will no longer be any jump scare games on our platform, people complain about, getting shocked about it. You know, what would that mean? Would people come to the defense of games like Five Nights at Freddy's, or Outlast, or Slender Man, or, again, there's probably 60 other horror themed games out there?
Yeah, any VR horror game.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
it's just not an easy answer. And again, what you just said there regarding, the games you like. And I'm the same way. As we said with the ESRB, I don't care what game rating your title gets. I don't care if your game is rated E, early childhood, AO, whatever. If it's a game that I want to play, I'm going to play it. And that's the same with these visual novel games. Again, I always joke about, will I ever buy Hoonie Pop at some point? But, like, most of those visual novel games, I don't care about. When I see those games on Keymailer or any of my press sites, I'm not going to play them. I've received keys from games like that. I could have gotten a key for that Super Seducer game from a few months ago. But they're not I don't find them enjoyable. I not find them interesting, so I don't play them. But there are people who do. If there wasn't an audience for these games, scratch the Josh novel. Oh god, I don't even imagine a visual Josh novel game. That's way too disturbing for me. But the point is, there is a market for these games. Is it as big as Call of Duty? Hell no. But if enough people buy, again, insert visual novel game here, that makes it profitable enough to keep that market going, then there is a market for it.
yeah. You're absolutely right. All of that stuff. It is the one question that comes up to me is, was this like a one-person decision at Valve? Like, how knowing how their games, their business is set up, and you can find their employee handbook online for free. That's how I found out.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it hard for me to believe that this was like an executive decision. It makes it easier for me to believe that this was a decision made by a small group of people who just had this opinion, or maybe they even crunched numbers. They're like, you know what, it's going to be financially viable if we do it this
Mm-hmm.
way. It just is a little weird that the fate of this largest uh, like electronic video game store in history is this decision is being made by a few people who aren't even the owners of the company. That's weird to me.
Mm-hmm. There are a ton of these visual novel games on Steam, and again, quality, that's subjective. We're not going to start reviewing visual novel games here on the channel. But if there is a market, there are people willing to buy it. As you just said, Rob, is it right for the store to rescind after all these months or even years in some cases? And again, like the short answer is yes. As we said, and as King also said, like if Valve tomorrow says any game with the color red in it, the letter C in the title, and if it's less than 3 hours long, they will ban from Steam. They can do that. If Steam wants to get, Howard Hughes level of craziness on us, that's within their right to do so. But it again raises that ever tricky point about censorship and what is acceptable when it comes to video games. Because, and again, this is probably could actually be a really good capper for our cast. Every region has its own rules, just as it has its own ratings board. And even from there, what's considered, mature or not changes as time goes on. You mentioned earlier, Rob, that, movies of the 70s and 80s that were considered G or PG-13 would probably be TV-14 or mature today. I mean, there are plenty of movies from the 80s that featured, drinking and sexual situations and all manner of crazy stuff that were considered, a fine family romp for the ages. So, it's always hard to know just what exactly is going to offend somebody, and does that really matter in the grand scheme of things with how fast things change?
Yeah, it's a hard question. I mean, I am of the opinion that yes, so whatever. People buy it. That's their choice. There are lines that will always be brought up, and then that question becomes harder and harder and harder to answer. Like, what if it's just a game that promotes Nazism in its purest form, and that's all it's about, and it is unapologetic about that? Like, is that a line? And for me personally, oh my God, it's a line. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I mean, that they don't want to be a double standard, but that's one of those things where I feel like I'd almost have to be. And I know that that's the case for a lot of individuals. It's like, for them, their line goes down a lot further. Maybe it is like the violence is great and then the sexual situations are bad, and that's their line.
Or
and
vice versa.
And then that line, if it's popular enough, it's hard to say.
And again, it's always that very sticky situation, because we can talk about, very cute visual novel games all day long, but there are, of course, very hardcore ones as well. Games that I mentioned here will probably get flagged on YouTube. And as King just said, yep, exactly. The double standard is broken if it's proven to be profitable. Because again, let's go, again, we're keeping with this visual novel thing. Let's say, thank you, Algardo. Let's say that one of these visual novel games does take off. Let's say it becomes the next Fortnite or the next Hearthstone in terms of sales numbers. Do you think Valve would be so quick to denounce that genre? Again, we talk about this with violence. People aren't complaining about violent video games or they're being overshadowed when games like Call of Duty, God of War, Last of Us, and you name it, are pulling in, industry record numbers and winning Game of the Year awards. Imagine if Hoonie Pop won a Game of the Year award, for instance. Will we still be having this conversation?
It's tough. I mean, it does bring up the God of War situation for sure, because that game is receiving laudations left and right.
Or even The Witcher 3, for instance. The Witcher series does have adult situations. The characters they show the characters making love. And now, it's not, hardcore porn, but it does show them having sex. But, again, people aren't complaining about The Witcher 3. And it goes back to what we were saying regarding games with adult themes versus adult themed games. It's the whole issue with the adult film industry. That there are people who find that to be a legitimate form of that medium. And then there are people who just immediately denounce it as smut, trash and stuff like that. But you cannot argue that the porn industry doesn't make a lot of money each year. And again, if it wasn't making that money, there wouldn't be an industry to begin with.
Yeah, it's totally true. But it is one of those things where, people know where to buy it though, and that is the one thing about Steam is if they say no, we don't want this genre in there. Well, people are going to know where to buy it. People are going to know where to go and get it. In terms of overall censorship, they're going to have a tough time censoring that particular genre because it is super popular and sells, quite a bit of money, or else there wouldn't be so many. But yeah, people are going to know where to go. So I'm not too worried about those titles or those developers. They just need to figure out, we can make our own store and not have to share any of our profits. Well, yeah, tough on you guys, I'm sure. But like, it just comes down to an argument against Steam. I mean, I'm always going to love Steam because it is an amazing thing that exists that I never thought would exist in a million years. And the careers it's made for a lot of developers, it's amazing. And then when they do, so they're a huge target, so to speak. And so when this stuff comes up, they are the subject. It's not the subject of the genre. It's not the subject of censorship. It's the subject of the storefront and their double standards, as we talked about. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes of it, so to speak.
And it's not going to get any easier as well. Again, until it's one of those cases where I think we either have to go one of two ways. We either say, okay, let everything work, or we basically say these stores have biases. And again, when it comes to a place like Valve and Steam with how they're run, it's very hard to put a finger on just what they actually care about, other than, of course, money. And it's just, again, it's not something that we're going to be solving in an hour and a half long live cast, or even over multiple ones. And I guess to wrap up my final thoughts, and then I'll turn it over to you, Rob, because we are running a little bit long here. Like, as I said before, I am against censorship in any way, shape, or form, whether it's something that I agree with or something that I don't. I say let the market decide. If the market wants battle royale games, if it wants visual novel games, if it wants hardcore hentai, whatever, let them decide. If they don't want it, it will disappear. If they do, there will be a market for it. But like I said, once you start censoring things, then it becomes that point as to what's the next thing to censor, and so on. And again, in order for this stuff to work, there has to be a free market. You can have games like God of War as well as Honey Pop. That's the extremes, just like with the film industry. You can have movies like Casablanca, Lord of the Rings, just as you can have insert porn title here.
Which is itself a porn title.
Probably. I'm sure there's probably 15 versions of that title somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's. I agree with you to a certain point, but there's also another point where I feel like, and it's a whole other discussion, but the market does decide, and the market does. That's why these businesses exist. Is because the market is there, and they're the ones that maintain a Steam. That's the reason why we all put up with Steam, is because the market as a whole, we gamers have said, you know what, the goods outweigh the bad. We're keeping this thing. If someone else comes along, well, they're going to have a really tough time prying it out of our cold dead hands. Amazon, I'm sure it's Amazon. I'm going to stick with that. The next ones, but like the market also kind of decides it for us, and I want to avoid that particular thing, because the marketers spend an awful lot of money telling us what we want, and while we gamers certainly know what we want, and as an industry we're actually very good at that, telling the market what's going on, and with the internet that's getting easier and easier and easier, but a lot of money gets thrown into these games, and then all that money gets thrown at us, and we get bombarded with it. It makes it difficult to make objective decisions sometimes. And when it all comes down to it, yes, let the market decide, but be wary of that market, because it can be manipulated. And with Steam is becoming a big part of that. They can do whatever they want, and it determines the fates of a lot of people.
Yep. And again, it's just one of those issues where it's just not going to get solved easily, and when it comes to Steam, again, who's going to really compete with them at this point? And we said this before, like, who's going to compete with World of Warcraft? Who's going to compete with Fortnite? And so on. But those are topics for, many, many more discussions to come. But I think with that, we are just about to hit an hour and a half in. We were only supposed to go for an hour, but that's kind of what happens here. So we're going to wrap things up for tonight. For you folks watching live, the grab bag voting for this week is now up. I'm putting the link in the chat if you want to vote for what games for me to play for next Saturday. I don't know what I'm going to do for tonight or for tomorrow. And again, there will be a live cast this Tuesday. That is May 22nd at 4 p.m. There'll be separate videos for that military kind of make people hungry. Thank you, old Gordo. And if you are new, be sure to check out our Discord channel where we talk about game industry and topics relating to game wisdom. You'll find that in the description below. But I guess, Rob, are you doing any more streaming in the coming weeks?
Tomorrow, look, we're doing apartment hunting now, so I wish, but probably not. But yeah, I will plug again NBA 2K League if you like esports at all and you want to check out something that's a little different. It's a basketball game esport, which is interesting. Great commentary, great commentators, good production. So I will push that. That is a project I'm working on right now. But I'll see you guys around. I do pay attention to the chat. I'll try and pop in every now and again, a little bit more than I have been.
All right, and if anyone would like to support us on patreon.com/UWBeister, I would greatly appreciate it, especially in these doldrums of summer months in terms of bills. And if you would like to, and if you do support us, you'll get these talks as well as our developer cast ad-free as well as early. Yeah, Ether, we open up the first round is still open to everybody, but then the Patreons still get the deciding votes for what games I play. But with that said, I'll be back hopefully later tonight around maybe 9:30 Eastern for some game. I don't know what I'm going to play just yet. And be sure to check in for those live streamings and daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom where we examine the art and science of games. So until next time, folks, have a great rest of the Sunday afternoon, and I will see you everybody later. Till next time, take care.